What's up, Chris?
What's going on, Jay?
Oh
Oh
man, it's a
man,
busy week already.
already, which doesn't make sense because yesterday was the deadline, so normally it should be like March.
Deadline? What are you talking about?
I heard, and it's not my area of expertise, but I heard that that certain tax returns were due on or around the 15th, which fell on Saturday, so they kicked it out to the
Right.
17th. So I
Yes,
think there were some things that were due. That would be yesterday, is
correct.
my understanding.
Correct. But
Yeah.
as soon as that March deadline hits, we are looking forward to the April deadline.
Oh, that's right. So
Because,
now we just have another deadline coming.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
All right.
this is like the first time in like 5 years that I can remember we're actually hitting on the 15th. It's always
Oh yeah.
been on a Sunday or the Monday was a holiday of some sort. And it's always a holiday in DC or something like that.
Oh,
So
okay.
this time we're ending
It's
on
actually
April
happening.
15th. Yes.
Well, that's really convenient
Right.
that we're talking about deadlines today, because that is the topic of our show today. The IRS is making headlines, not by enforcing deadlines, but for all other kinds of reasons that taxpayers and accounting professionals might not be all that happy about. Last week we talked about niching, so if you want to make sure to go back and listen to our synopsis, summary, and conversation around Kindell's article on AT Think. Today we're going to be talking about the IRS and how their recent continued budget cuts up to $20 billion and their layoffs could impact the rest of tax season, the IRS operations, and then of course firm related workloads. So Jay, unless you got something else, let's get to it, huh?
Well, let's light this candle. Let's get it going.
Let's do it.
Yes.
Why does this topic matter right now? Well, we just mentioned it, right? It's the middle of this tax season, right? A deadline was yesterday. Another critical deadline is within a month's time,
Yep.
and so this is happening right in the middle of tax season. They're cutting budget, they're cutting employees. This is maybe the worst timing possible. Um, in fact, I don't know that you could really even come up with a worst. Like, if you could pick a worst time, Jay, is there one? Does it even exist? No.
No, because this is it. Uh, it's now and then it is the September October time
Right. Yeah.
because
Those extensive deadlines.
you're filing returns or you're trying to get information to file returns and you got to
Right.
call them. You're having e-file rejections.
Yeah.
Clients don't remember their identity
Beacons.
pins,
Yeah.
and so all those things you're calling the IRS for, and you need to get responses to it so that we
Right.
can get these filed. And then on the backside of that, we have people filing and they can't make their payments, and they're going to
Yeesh.
call right after they file so that they can make payment arrangements. Now,
Right.
you say, well, don't they just do that online and fill out a payment arrangement form? Well, if you're going to be paying it in like less than 4 months, you could do a telephone payment arrangement, and you can
Right.
say, hey, I'm going to pay it. Just give me 4 months. And
Right.
they'll notate the file and everything. You're still going to pay interest and penalties. It's all good, but they work it out. So
Right.
all these things, you need to have somebody on the other end of that phone to
Yeah.
answer it.
Right. That seems like a really important thing, right? And the
Yep.
IRS is like I mentioned, there's a $20 billion budget cut, right? But on top of that, they're also laying off 6 to 7 thousand employees, and eventually, although not maybe right away, but eventually it could be up to as much as 50% of the workforce. So all of those calls, maybe now you get on hold for a little longer. Maybe now you don't have somebody with any experience to be able to answer the question that you had. Somebody who's new or something. I don't know. There could be all kinds of different problems, concerns that could happen,
Yeah,
right?
and there's been discrepancies about the number of people that are being laid off right now
Yeah,
because, Doge is saying it's these numbers, the Treasury Secretary is saying it's these numbers, and he's like, yeah, we're reviewing it, and we're going to figure out how many people
yeah,
we can let go. Well, I really hope that's the case. So,
yeah. And and then the final thing, like why this matters right now, is a lot of that $20 billion, Jay. We've talked on this show about how that money wasn't being spent on, arming agents to go out and knock on doors, right? That money was being spent on upgrading technology,
Yeah.
improving infrastructure, and all of those types of things. And now all of those modernization efforts, instead of being continued, they're just being paused.
Yep.
And
For
so
sure.
this has a, there's a lot of different bad things that can come out of this. The first one is, of course, processing slowdowns, right?
Yeah.
If you're using the old technology, it's not as fast, it's not as good. Customer service issues that we've already talked about, and then of course, like, increased fraud risks, because now there's less opportunity to catch those things because of the less modern technology and all of the things that go along with that. Um, so So in this episode, right, we're going to talk a little bit more about what those budget cuts are. We're going to talk about some of the impacts of those, with the intention of helping tax professionals to navigate the impacts of these cuts, to help make sure that business owners and individuals like understand what this means for their potential tax filings, and then make sure that accounting firms that rely on IRS resources for tax compliance and resolution work, that they also understand kind of some of the impacts of that. So let's jump into that, Jay. Let's break down these budget cuts.
You got it.
We never talked about it by name, I don't think, but in the Inflation Reduction Act, that was the act that originally gave the IRS the $80 billion. That $80 billion, again, wasn't like a one-time thing. They weren't giving $80 billion to IRS agents immediately for their AR-15s or something, right? It wasn't that. It was $80 billion over 10 years. Over the past year, Congress has already clawed back $20 billion of that, so reducing those funds meant to modernize and improve the IRS. So that was already a bummer. This latest cut is another second $20 billion that that's been removed. That was from the continuing resolution that I think passed the Senate over the weekend. Is that right, Jay?
That is
Or
correct.
maybe the last,
Like you said, that 80 billion was over 10 years.
Yeah.
So they might have gotten
8,
yeah, exactly.
15.
Yeah, and they've and in my opinion, they spent it wisely.
Right. We've talked about that.
Yes, they might have hired a lot of people, which they needed to answer the phones, but over the last 12 to 18 months, the technology that has been put in place at the IRS has been really good, and it's been saving a lot of time, and it has immediately ceased. So all of that work, you do that, and you put these tools in place, and now you're going to stop all new development. It's going to play havoc on those tools because they're going to start falling behind, and then everything else you had in its on the roadmap is going to stop. So now you're going to have to remap that entire project because in a year technology changes, and now you're going to have to fix it to the technology that has advanced over that time. Now maybe Elon and his band of merry men can put better technology in place. I don't know, but so far it's been really good.
Yeah, I mean, the IRS was always planning to improve, like with digital services, with AI-driven audits. Like there was always an intention to do that, and so now those efforts are what's been put on hold. And then of course, like we talked about already, there's now a layoff of a bunch of people. Whatever that number is, I guess, is to be determined. But anytime you lay off people, like there are lots of problems that can come from that, and especially in an agency like the IRS that is so reliant on people processing stuff. That means that there's longer wait times, there's delayed responses, and then inherently there are processing bottlenecks. So there are all kinds of ways that these budget cuts can have significant and significantly negative impacts. When you think about that, Jay, is there a particular thing that upsets you the most?
Well, I mean, right now, you're well aware. I've had a client that's going through an issue, and In the last 2 weeks, I've called the IRS 4 times. And
Oh yeah.
because, and this has always been an issue, is getting that power of attorney in their hands. And, when you need to talk to them right now, there's only one way to do that, and that's to fax it. And I will tell you that now, actually, it's over the last 4 weeks, I have submitted 2 powers of attorney twice. And they're like, and there is a tool now to upload these. And it works well, but it takes, if you fax it in, it takes 2 weeks, they say, to get it on your file. It's still, it's supposed to take 5 days or less if you upload it. And it's still 10 to 15 business days. So that area is starting to still fall behind now.
Right.
So that is one of the biggest issues. And, their fax solution, I don't know if it's the fact that we are using a eFax to fax it out via email, but it seems to be taking twice as long for those faxes to get through now as well. It's taking 2 5 to 7 minute holds for them to get the faxes. And it always takes an additional 5 to 7 minute hold. And I say that because that is what they say. I'm going to put you on a 5 to 7 minute hold. And it takes an additional one for them to review it, come back and say, okay, it's good. So we're looking at anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes after we've sent this fax to actually talk to somebody and figure out an issue. And, if it's a pretty big issue, you're looking at another 3 to 5 holds. So, you can't get by dealing with the IRS in less than an hour.
Right.
And that's with no hold time. No wait time.
Yeah.
So.
Right. So that those changes, all right, like taking people away, that's what this does, right? That's the outcome that you see.
Yeah.
One thing that we haven't really talked about is how these cuts can affect enforcement and audits. I think for the most part, like these things are pretty self-explanatory, right? Less funding means fewer audits. There's less people to do them. In the short term, right? So
correct.
Like maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. But I think we would all agree that instead of doing this, the IRS is going to likely shift to high value audits and automation of enforcement tools, right? And so you're going to get letters, whether you were meant to or not. I know, Jay, it was a couple months ago that you were talking about how you were getting a letter related to something that just didn't even make any sense for a while.
Yeah.
So we may see more of that.
Well, it was also a delay letter. I mean, it was issue that I had brought up over the summer, and they responded in August saying they would need an additional 60 to 90 days, and then it was in January or February I got another letter saying they need an additional 60 to 90 days, and it's like, wait a minute, that's you missed a whole 60 to 90 days in that gap there. So and thankfully so, I did take it upon myself to call again and get somebody that understood what I was trying to get accomplished. Right. And they resolved the issue on the phone with me that day. It took another hour and 7 5-minute holds. But the issue got resolved. And it was all because payroll provider was not checking the right box on 941. So resolved.
Small things, man. Yeah. Small things can make big problems.
For sure.
So the other thing, of course, and we mentioned this already as well, is that there are, when you have less enforcement, when you have less people, there is an increase in fraud risk, because there's nothing that scammers love more than IRS chaos.
Correct.
Because it's very easy to take advantage of chaos when it's happening, because there's less people checking what was going on. And so that's a thing that will definitely tick up, I expect. And so And so I just want to spend the next little bit here talking about like we've talked kind of broadly about this, but what does this mean for tax pros and accounting firms? Like, what should we expect? Like, what kinds of things should we expect? And I think the first one is more taxpayer confusion, maybe even more problems, right?
Yeah.
So the when the IRS is slow and less responsive, instead of calling themselves, which I can't imagine a lot of our clients are doing, but instead of calling themselves and being like, I'm going to sit on hold, they're just going to ask you, right? They're going to ask you to, hey, can you call to resolve my payment issue or whatever, maybe even the simplest of requests. They may turn to you for help. Now, so to some degree, maybe that's a good thing, right? You're getting to show your value, but what that does do is increase your firm's workload, right? And that isn't a positive thing, especially if you have planned around the current capacity that you have, right?
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, a lot of those issues require a phone call to do it. So
Right.
that is time you're going to have to dedicate to being on the phone. It's hard. I mean, yes, it's a wait time and many occasions, and then you have
Right.
the hold time. But it's really hard to do other work while you're sitting there because they might pop in at any time to ask you something. You don't want to get involved in a reconciliation of
Right.
something or creating a rollover form or something while you're waiting because they're going to interrupt it. And you want to be able to be as efficient as possible, but in some of these cases, it's not the best use of your time to be multitasking at those times.
Right. Right. And so one thing that you should do, or that you want to be able to do, is to educate your clients on realistic timelines for processing, right? You want them to understand like how long those phone calls can take, and especially in this situation like we're in, right? Like how long it can take to resolve those issues or to understand what those issues are, and get them fixed. So the more that you're able to communicate that and educate your clients on, the better that's going to be overall. Um,
And like you said, part of that is setting the expectations with the clients. Uh,
yeah.
one of these issues I've been working on the clients like, well, we were advised that you have access to a portal and you can get access to it in 45 minutes. Well,
Mm,
there is no portal for us to access for businesses. If
oh,
I can send you right now a power of attorney through the IRS tools that were built recently, and you could
yeah.
give me delegated access to your tax file.
Right.
But if you
That's my
had
personal type of.
right, right, if you had an S corp, you could probably access it pretty easily,
Yeah.
but I
Right.
couldn't. And there are
Um,
some companies, some entities that you can. I haven't been able to access any at this point.
oh
I
no.
have been able to access my companies, that's for sure. And C corps, the only ones that can access those are people that get W twos from them.
Ah,
So,
interesting.
right. So it's like somebody is telling taxpayers that we have access, but we really don't. The only access we honestly have is to the individual accounts, and it's been helpful, to be honest with you. And that's one of those technology
Yeah.
tools
Right.
that have been
Lots of
built. That's been really good.
right. Right.
Yeah.
Some things that accounting firms can do too, related to this, right, is a little bit of what you're talking about there, right? Proactive
Yep.
communication. Like you want to do that all the time, but in this particular case, if there's going to be potential delays or things that are causing issues, like you really want to be proactive around that, so that you're communicating that to your clients and letting them know in advance, like these are the potential issues we could run into.
Yep.
One other service offering ad that you might consider is IRS representation services. Like more clients are going to need help navigating these slow responses, and so this is an opportunity for accounting firms. One final thing, and Jay, I'd love your thoughts on this, but you should consider technology and automation to handle this increased demand. Jay, do you have some thoughts about how folks can do that?
Yes and no. So,
Uh,
utilize technology to get your powers of attorney signed. If
mm,
you can use the IRS Tax Pro portal to request your
Hmm.
powers of attorney for the individual accounts. But yeah, I was going to get into this at the end of the section, but yeah, a couple of things. If you want to know where your refund is, don't email your tax preparer or your CPA. Go on Where's My Refund, and it's a link. It just type in IRS Where's My Refund, put in your social security number, your expected refund, and your filing status. It will tell you where it is, what status it is, and it works. You know, I had somebody that's like, it's been 4 weeks, I haven't got my refund. I said, well, go on, where's my refund? And lo and behold, they actually got it 2 weeks before. They just didn't know it. So utilize that
wow.
technology for sure.
Yeah.
But like I said, use some technology to get the powers of attorney signed. That could be problematic depending on how you need to use that power of attorney. So
Sure.
first thing I want to say is we talked about delays getting through.
Right.
My last 4 calls to the IRS, I got through in a wait of less than 4 minutes each time, which I
Wow,
think is
yeah, I know.
phenomenal. You know,
Yeah,
in the
that's great.
past, you're able to do that if you call at 7 a.m. when they open up. I did that yesterday. Yeah. It was 2:30 in the afternoon. I called and I got through in 3.5 minutes, which is
No, that's amazing.
pretty good.
Right.
We did have to fax those powers of attorney. All 4 of those calls, I had to fax it 4 times. So this time I'm waiting for it, and well, actually there were more calls than that because they didn't accept my powers of attorney. Because, and here's the rub. There's so much inconsistency because there's so many different employees
yeah.
and different levels
Yeah.
of employee. So
Right.
they now allow a digital signature on powers of attorney, but only if you're uploading it.
Oh,
Now,
really?
Yeah. So I'm going to upload it, but I still need to talk to somebody right now. So I had to fax it, and I fax it, and they're like, first caller, let me through and give me anything I needed with that power of attorney. The second time, no, sorry, sir, this is an electronic signature. It's not going to pass. So then I sent another one to the client, had him sign it again, send it back to me, send it in. It was fine after that. But it's just those inconsistencies. It's like, okay, if we're going to fax it, it's got to have a wet signature. But it's a fax. It's not a wet signature at that point. Is it really?
Yeah.
So, and let's get that straight because it's a waste of time. It truly is. And
Right.
yeah, so that's the biggest issue. But I mean, with all this turmoil on deadline day, got through in 4 minutes. I was shocked. I was expecting we are busier than usual. Call back another time and click. But it didn't happen. So I was really happy about that. Yeah.
That is really great. But you mentioned turmoil, and so anytime you're talking about the IRS and you talk about turmoil, one of the things that I think comes to taxpayers' minds, and especially if they're like navigating slow responses and doing all of that stuff, is like, does that mean I should be more concerned about audits now? And to answer that question, I think, and this is the thing that tax professionals need to think about too, like in the short term, the IRS has fewer resources to aggressively audit small businesses. That's just going to be true. In the longer term, our expectation is that the IRS is still going to use those AI and automation tools that we've talked about that they've been developing to catch errors and issues. And so proper tax compliance is still really important. And so I think this is a thing that needs to be communicated to clients too. So just because there's a few less enforcement agents at the IRS doesn't mean you should just go around committing tax fraud now. You still want to do the right thing, but you may see fewer audits in the short term. But we may see the increase in the future. One thing, and we've alluded to it and talked about it several different times, but one thing that we'll almost certainly see more of is tax scams and fraud. Scammers may pose as IRS agencies more often during these times of uncertainty. So you may get the text message of instead of it being your package is caught at the UPS thing, it may be your return, your refund is your refund is being held up. Please give us a call. You you never know, right? Like all kinds
Yeah.
of things like that could happen, right? Taxpayers, regular people get confused by these IRS delays all the time, and they may fall for phishing scams more easily of like, all kinds of different things, right? Of here's an updated status. It's a letter. I know, Jay, we talked last year, probably around the same time, about how there was being a letter that was circulated that looked like an IRS letter,
Yep.
but it wasn't the IRS at all. It was like some other company, and it was some other thing to look out for. So one of the things that tax pros and that accounting firms should definitely do is warn clients about these common scam tactics. Like, be aware of these things that can happen, and understand that the IRS is not going to text you. They're almost certainly not going to email you directly, right? All of these things are important things to be aware of, right? Uh, Understand that those things are out there, and then make sure that people know to watch out for them, right? Unsolicited emails, phone calls, texts claiming to be from the IRS, not real. That's just not a thing. The IRS will almost certainly never do that. Scammers that demand immediate payments or threaten legal action, also not the way the IRS works. So you want to make sure that you're communicating that to people as well. And on social media, right, Jay? Like, the IRS is they don't have time for Twitter, right, or Facebook. They're not they're not going to be in your DMs about taking care of your tax return or making sure you're getting payments on time.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah,
So
but you brought up a good point, and those letters last year, and what I was telling my clients that were getting them is, if there's a phone number on the letter and you suspect it might be fraud or abuse,
yeah,
don't call the number on the letter. And in any case, if you get an email, never click an email,
no,
a link in an email from the IRS, because they're not going to email you.
no,
Just going
does
to
not.
tell you that right
Not
now.
how they work.
And the IRS is not going to call you unless you've already gotten a letter that they've already sent you to collections. So,
Yeah.
and it will state the name of the collection agency and a phone number. Now, if you do get a letter, don't call the number on the letter, because odds are you're going to a fraud call center. Call the appropriate number for the IRS. Anytime I call, I am calling the practitioner priority line. I have it programmed in my phone. I don't know the number, but if you are a taxpayer calling about your individual return, 1-800-829-1040. Call that number.
There you go.
Do not go by the number on
Some document
on that letter. And most of the time, the IRS numbers are always 800 numbers. There are a couple of 855 numbers, and there's one number that is 269. That is to the international line when you're dealing with international issues. And I think it's in West Virginia. No, I don't know if it's in
269, wherever that is.
Yeah, it might be Philadelphia. I don't remember.
Sure.
But,
Don't know.
Yeah, not important. But
Yeah,
call a number that you know is the IRS.
that's right. That is the important thing, right? And again, understand the IRS is not. They're not going to send you texts. They're not going to email you. They're not going to slide in your DMs. That's just not what the IRS is going to do. They may call you, but Jay outlined that is pretty rare, and it's only if you're like in collections, that kind of thing. And they will definitely send you letters, but be aware of what those letters are.
And one other thing, I just want to go on record. No matter what your congressman tells you, you can't email them either. You can't email them. So there.
Oh,
there you
no.
go. Yeah. He's like, I don't have IRS issues. I just email them. Okay, you keep going.
Must be
Send me
nice,
that
yeah.
email address. I still haven't seen it. It's been 10 years.
Department of Treasury or something. He's
Yeah.
like talking directly to whatever his name is, Besson or whatever. Walking over.
I gotta say, I watched Besant on TV this weekend, and he looks like one of those wax figures in the Hall of Presidents at Disney. He looks like one of the animatrons.
Yeah.
I can't help it. I mean, if you've gone there and you've gone, it's the Hall of Presidents, and they're just sitting in the room, and it's like he looks like one of those wax figures that's up there. It's like it's crazy.
Yeah, that is pretty wild.
Yeah.
I I haven't noticed, but I've also not really been trying to look him up either. So, so now I'm going to, and I'm sure I'm never going to be able to get that image out of my mind. Thanks a lot, Jay.
Well, I knew he was going to be on Meet the Press this weekend, so I watched it just to hear what he was going to say. Because,
Nice.
what happens to the IRS, it matters. I mean,
It's important, right?
last week, I spent 4 of my 5 days buried in taxes.
Yep.
And, if it's going to become problemsome, I want to know ahead of time and get
Right.
ahead of it.
That's right. And that's one of the things that people should be doing, right? So as you think as a tax firm or a business about what you need to do next, right? The first thing is you need to understand all the facts. So exactly what Jay described, right? You need to know what's going on. You need to be listening to people like us talk about that, right? The next thing that you need to do is adjust your expectations and timelines. So expect longer processing times. For those clients that are getting refunds, like expect potential refund delays. Prepare your clients for these like longer and slower responses from the IRS because that's going to happen. Um, and then like a simple thing, although it's although you're kind of running out of time for that now, but encourage early filing whenever it's possible, right? So that not that it impacts your audit your like audit rate or whatnot, but like it just does make it easier because it gives you more time to solve problems.
Yeah.
So early filing, if you can be really valuable. Um, and then what do you do to support your clients during this chaos, right? What are the things that you can do? Well, one easy one is to provide regular updates. So be out there. Make sure that you're giving. If you've got a newsletter, if you've got a social media account, make sure that you're communicating. Hey, this is what's happening right now. Or hey, this new scam, we saw about it, right? It's like be aware of this. Don't fall for it. Make sure that you're communicating those regular updates to your clients as timely as possible. And then of course we just talked about this, but educate your clients about those IRS communication methods that we just talked about, right? Tell them this is the way the IRS will contact you, and more importantly, this is the way the IRS will not contact you, so that your clients can avoid scams. And then one last thing, provide guidance on the best practices for dealing with those IRS delays and communications. Like, so you got the letter, what do you do now? You're gonna see a delay. What do you do now? Jay, do you have any other what you should do next ideas or thoughts?
Yes, most definitely. So I mentioned the online portal. I
Yeah.
suggest you go and Google taxpayer online account and set up your own online account. Create your login. You can access your own tax account. You can see your transcripts, your payments, all the history. I would get it for you, your spouse if you're married. Get that done. And then once you have that account, go and search for how do I get an IP PIN? It's an identity protection PIN. Get that IP PIN, and that will protect you from fraudulent returns. And by having it, nobody can file a return if they don't have it electronically and try to claim a refund on your account. And that's a horrible thing to have to deal with because if we have fewer employees at the IRS, it's going to make it even more difficult to get that resolved. So
Right.
try to get ahead of the game and get the IP PIN.
Yep. And that's the thing I might have to look into, Jay. I'm gonna be asking you about that over the next week. So the key summary here, right? The IRS budget cuts. This is a big issue, and it has the potential to cause significant impacts to both you and your clients. And so with that, you need to prepare, and you need to do that by doing a few different things. The first one, make sure you manage your client expectations. Make sure that they understand what to expect, be that delays, be that communications, all of those things. As much as possible, you want to automate processes to handle increased inquiries or increased questions or increased concerns from your clients. And then next, you want to stay proactive in communication and education. Thanks, Jay. I'll have to give that a look. So again, finally, you want to stay proactive in communication and education for your clients. Is like that is a critical thing to do all of the time, but all that much more critical when chaos is happening. So make sure that you're staying proactive in communications and education to your clients and also to your team, right? You want to make sure that when client questions come to anybody on your team, that they can all answer in the same way and allow for a consistent message across your firm. So where can you go to get more help? Well, you can follow Jay's link related to IP updates, right? IP pin updates. You can also subscribe here to the Practice Playbook for more information. You can look all over the IRS website. Jay shared another one there.
Yeah, there it is again.
You can.
This is to create. This to view your online account. You can go follow it through and be able to create your account from that link as well. So yeah, this is some of that great technology we were talking about.
Yeah, right. All of the things that have happened. You can follow us and other tax professionals that are leading communicators on social media for real-time insights, and make sure you're looking out for communications directly from the IRS, because they will let you know as much as they can, right? They have been really good about informing the consumer about scams that are out there and scams they're seeing. So for those types of issues, definitely be on the alert. Um, and then one thing that I'd love to hear, like we talked about a lot of things here, but we didn't talk about like a comprehensive summary. Are there things that these IRS can do that will impact tax professionals that we didn't talk about? Things we aren't thinking about? If so, we'd love to hear it. Leave it in the comments. Let us know about it. Make sure we're not leaving anything out. I know I love to see all the ways that people have had those impacts. So what impacts are you seeing directly? I'd love to hear that too. Jay, do you have any final thoughts or final notes for today?
I just want to say, and we've talked about this before as well, 95% of all the income for the United States government comes in through the IRS.
Right.
And it is so important that flow continues, because if there's going to be more tax cuts coming, that means there's going to be less tax revenue. And if you're not enforcing it, that means less money coming through. So you still won't be bringing the deficit down. So, let's keep it where we need it to be so that we maintain the proper enforcement and the proper levels, so that, we are bringing that budget deficit down. We are still cutting spending, whatever we need to do, but let's just go about it the right way and, make sure that everybody's got a fair fighting chance to get their situations resolved.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, I think that's the whole purpose of a tax professional, right? Is
For
to
sure.
help your clients get their tax issues taken care of. And so being able to do that as speedy and efficiently as possible is valuable to everyone. And so I think we can agree that that's another main theme of our message. The IRS is an important agency for lots of different reasons. Making them work effectively is a good thing. And in these trying times at the IRS, it is important to be proactive in all kinds of different ways. So make sure you're doing that. Jay, I don't know that we've got anything else to talk about today. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on in this episode of the Practice Playbook?
Just want those of you that still have a month left till the deadline, keep your heads up, keep your heads in that tax software, get those returns done. Know that we got a break coming, and second season's right behind us. So get it done, get your break in there, and let's get through it and get through this tax season.
Couldn't say it any better. Let's get through it.
Yeah.
And as you do, we'll be right here to talk to you on Tuesdays at what 5 Eastern, 4 Central every Tuesday. Jay and I will be here to talk you through tips, strategies, and other concerns to your firm and how to help make it a better place. So join us next week as we talk about whatever comes up next week, and look out for communications from the IRS and from others on a going forward basis. Thanks for spending time with us today. Hit us in the comments with feedback, with your IRS stories, and with anything else that comes to your mind. We'd love to see it. Thanks for spending time with us. Have a good one.
See you, everybody. Take care.